Alright, here we are another night where there's nowhere to go, nothing to do, and no one to look up to. All the great podcast themes have been turned into podcast theme parks, and I don't know about you, but...
Hello, baby, I've been waiting for a Christian Slater podcast.
Alright, welcome back to the Christian Slater Monitor. I'm Oswald Ramirez. You can call me Ozzy, and I'm here with...
Reno, Carson.
Huzzah! And today we're going to be talking about 1998's now cult hit, as I recall, a flop during its day, but it seems like people like this movie now. Very Bad Things. And we do have a little bit of old business in that I didn't realize we're really the Kirstian science monitor for women. Since we've had this show for under a year, and Joan Didion and Anne Rice and Betty White, all featured on this program, have passed away in the last year.
I didn't know that Anne Rice died. I did know about Joan Didion and obviously Betty White, but...
Yeah, Betty White from Hard Rain. Yeah, Anne Rice passed away also in 2021, even before the beginning of the year.
I didn't know that. Yeah, that is cursed.
So hopefully nothing bad will happen to Cameron Diaz or Janine Triplehorn from this film. Or Kobe Tai. How did you find out about this movie existing?
Well, I remember it from like when I was a kid. Like I remember it when it came out. I remember seeing ads for it and stuff. I didn't see it at that time, but I do remember it.
I remember ads for it and thinking it looked really bad and not wanting to see it, even though I was curious because I wanted to see Christian Slater movies, but this one didn't look good. And then it kind of came and went really fast and got poor reviews that I recall. And yeah, I think a friend got it on DVD at some point and we were supposed to watch it, but I wasn't even like, yeah, we got to watch that today. And I never watched it with him. Yeah, I just never got around to seeing it. I think if I'd realized it had so much nudity in it, I probably would have seen it before now.
It's not even good nudity, like, though. It's not even, like, in my opinion, it's not, like, good nudity.
Yeah, it was okay.
It's combined with, like, a bunch of gross, like... We'll talk about that later.
Yeah. This is written and directed by Peter Berg, who used to be an actor. I guess he still acts a little bit, but he used to be in tons of stuff. Are you familiar with him as an actor?
Let me see. Let me Google him really quick.
He's a handsome actor. Like. He's kind of a bow-hunky actor. I was joking that this movie seemed like it was written by one of the characters he would play in a movie, because he often plays kind of a dopey guy. Like he plays a dopey guy or a bully in a lot of movies. Like he's in Copland and he's in Collateral. That's one where he doesn't play such a dopey guy. He plays Mark Ruffalo's partner as a cop. He was the white boxer in the movie The Great White Hype. He was a dumb guy in a good movie called The Last Seduction.
He looks totally familiar to me. Like I definitely recognize him, but I'm trying to think of what I recognize him from. He's in Girl 6 apparently.
Oh yes, he wasn't a dumb guy in that. He was the guy that she falls in love with. He's the guy that calls the phone sex hotline and like catfishes her.
Yeah, I love Girl 6.
Me
so
maybe
too. That's what I recognize him from.
Yeah, he's the guy that catfishes her in that.
Yeah. I definitely recognize him.
I didn't see Girl 6 until recently. That was a hard movie to track down for a long time.
Yeah, I watched it in college. Like one of our friends showed it to us. And I loved it then, but I haven't seen it since. But I really loved it when I watched it.
I probably only saw it for the first time maybe like 3 years ago, 4 years. No, less than 3 years ago. I'd say in just the last like maybe 2.5 years. Yeah, somewhere in there I finally saw Girl 6. It was hard to find. Then I kind of forgot to find it for a long time. All of a sudden I was like, oh yeah, I never watched Girl 6. Let's watch that.
Well, and it's so crazy because that's supposed to be one of Spike Lee's like worst movies, but I think it's one of his best movies personally.
I like most of his movies from that era, like from pretty much, what's the one that is big? Do the Right Thing until 25th Hour. I like most of those movies, and some of them I love. And then what's the one after that? She Hate Me. After She Hate Me, I think that they become a lot more hit and miss. Like I liked Black Klansman, but I hated, what's the one that everybody said should have been Defy Bloods? I thought was really bad.
Yeah, I don't like that movie. I don't really like Black Klansman actually either very much. Didn't he remake like, what is that
Old
Korean
Boy?
movie? Yeah.
That was not good.
I didn't see the remake. I've seen the Korean version, but that's so weird.
I wasn't big on the Korean version, but it was was better than Spike Lee's version.
Yeah, I think the Korean version is like a little bit too like weird and sicko for me.
Me too. All those Korean movies to me, for the most part, are like that, where people are like, you gotta see this twisted Korean movie. And then I see it and I'm like,
really
I'm just not twisted enough to relate to this movie.
My mom really liked Old Boy, actually, but I was like, this is a little much for me.
Yeah, me too. This was a little much for me. No, I don't know. This was not.
This was way too much for me personally. I have a pretty high tolerance for this type of stuff, and I like stuff. This movie is in like such bad taste, but like not. I like movies that are in bad taste, but like this was in bad taste, like in a way that is not good. It wasn't like good bad taste.
I wasn't really offended by it so much as, well, we'll get into it. I just felt like it either needed to take itself more seriously with its plot or needed to have more funny jokes, or both. Like it wasn't funny enough or serious enough.
Totally. It's shot like a thriller or like something serious. It doesn't have like a comedic vibe, but then there's like this Willy Bobo like jazz kind of like Curb Your Enthusiasm music that's supposed to make it like kind of have like a funny vibe or something, but it's not funny. Like this movie is not funny at all.
It has a couple of laughs, I thought, but not for, this was the era of like when dark comedies were huge, or they tried to be
like
huge.
Okay, so I heard someone compare it to like Todd Solondz or like the Farrelly Brothers, or like even so like if I were going to compare this to a movie tonally, I would say it kind of reminds me of like A Serious Man or something.
See, I was going to say the Coen brothers. This movie was like 2 years after Fargo had been up for all those Oscars, was when this came out. And
but it's it's not funny like that though. Like I feel like that movie is kind of like sickly funny or something,
yes.
But like this is just plainly not funny to me.
And this is also the era of when Tarantino was riding high, though he's still riding high. But when so many movies were just direct rip-offs of what Quentin Tarantino did, like the video store was just filled with wannabe Tarantino movies. And this actually, one thing I'll say about this is that it wasn't that much of a wannabe Tarantino movie, really. Or even, really, it didn't feel like a wannabe Coen Brothers movie either. But I do think it definitely, when you say A Serious Man, that the Coen Brothers would be the closest thing in tone.
Yeah, I think A Serious Man is like the vibe it was going for. It doesn't have that vibe, in my opinion. Like it misses the mark, but I think it was going for like funny in that type of way. Like it's supposed to be funny. Like I get how it could have been better, but as it is, it's just really sick and fucked up and like not funny. Like I also think if it had just been serious, like that would have also been like more interesting. Like you said, if it was serious, it would have been a better movie, or if it was funnier, it would have been a better movie. But
or just a comedy that took its plot more seriously. There are several times in this movie, or just throughout the movie, where I'm like, this just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
it really, my suspension of disbelief was not suspended enough or abused. Yeah, but I would forgive that in like an Adam Sandler or Will Ferrell movie if it was funny and just had crazy gags all the time.
I think somewhere I read that Adam Sandler was supposed to be in this movie.
Interesting.
Like he was supposed to play the Jeremy Piven part in it.
Oh, crazy.
I don't know if that's true, but I read that somewhere.
I did think sometimes that this movie would be slightly better if the Christian Slater part was played by John Cusack. Like I could see some of the gags, John Cusack adding something to them. Like we'll get into the specific gags. Peter Berg said he came up with this idea for this movie after he got into yoga and meditation, and the meditation gave him stillness of mind to focus and write, and also when he would meditate, these thoughts that became the plot of the movie came into his head. And so I was thinking maybe we should put yoga and meditation with Bridges of Madison County on the Christian Slater Monitor list of life don'ts.
Yeah, I think so. If this is what you come up with when you're like in Zen mode, then don't do it.
Just don't do it. Also, I noticed Peter Berg was married once, and his marriage ended the same year this movie was released.
Oh.
So maybe.
Interesting.
And he was spotted making out with Cameron Diaz at the premiere of this movie. At least he maybe got together with Cameron Diaz.
She looks great in this movie. I'll say that.
She was
This is
probably
like prime Cameron Diaz.
She was in 1 trillion movies a year when this came out. I was looking at her IMDb, and it was like between when she was in The Mask and the year 2000, or maybe even a little after the year 2000, she was in 1 trillion movies every year. It was pretty wild. I thought she was the worst part of this movie.
Ooh, I don't know. That's tough.
It is tough. She was pretty bad, I thought. At any rate, are you ready to get into the plot?
Begin spoilers.
Yes.
Okay, so we begin with a bridal march over an IEG Pictures logo. The initials IEG stood for Initial Entertainment Group. So the initials were for initials. And then it also made by Ballpark Productions, who had a movie called Hollywood North. That's the only other movie they did. You can watch that online, but I didn't end up watching it. And Interscope Records produced the movie. And this movie did seem to be very like soundtrack forward. You mentioned the wacky music. That was by Stuart Copeland, who is used to be the drummer for the Police. And this is a lot like a lot of his scores. Like his first score was for the movie Rumblefish, and his scores usually have this vibe, and I don't really like them that much. But this is our second movie done by a drummer from a famous rock band, because we had Pump Up the Volume was by Cliff Martinez, who was the Red Hot Chili Peppers drummer. We start off with Favreau and that other guy, Orson something, we'll get to it, the non-famous guy in the group. And they're in their tuxes, and it's right before the wedding, and everyone's outside there for the wedding, and Jon Favreau's really stressed. And it was very jarring to see Jon Favreau with cheekbones again.
Oh, I was thinking that too. Like, first of all, I mean, I kept thinking like the fact that he's with Cameron Diaz and she's like simping over him was like a little far-fetched, but he is prime Jon Favreau too.
Yeah,
like he looks like a normal.
He went, he was a very heavy guy, and then he lost a ton of weight, and then he gained it all back.
I don't even mind him as like an actor, especially from this time period.
I thought he was fantastic in this movie.
Yeah.
I think he's probably the best part of the movie. If I was to pin down who I thought was the best.
He's definitely the least hysterical and the most like disciplined and stuff.
He has a few moments here that are pretty good too, like, we'll get to, or at least I liked. Because, okay, so we have them sitting, and they're in white tuxes. And then we flash back to Diaz and Piven getting their wedding license. They're the people getting married in the movie. And she's a real bridezilla, and she's just really manic and hassling him about checks being sent out to different things. And he forgot the check for the tent. And she says she bets he remembered to send out the checks for the bachelor party, though. And the way he reacts to her when she says that, I thought was one of his good moments. Is he does a reaction shot of like thinking like, oh, I knew this was going to come up, that I thought was kind of good. And I was going to ask you, do you think Cameron Diaz and Jon Favreau have chemistry in this movie?
Well, I mean, there's really not like, there actually aren't too many scenes of them together. Like a lot of the movie takes place with them apart, and you don't really see a lot of scenes of them even being like physical or like, so it's hard to say.
There's just a lot of scenes of her yelling at him a lot and then asking if he loves her, and him being like, yes.
Yeah, it's like, this is Vanilla Sky Cameron Diaz for sure, and she's just playing like a wacky like BPD kind of like bridezilla.
I thought she was really really shrill in this, and that I was surprised that this is like the year before she would be in Being John Malkovich and Any Given Sunday, and I think she's really good in both of those movies.
She's super hit or miss too, because it's like, yeah, sometimes I like her. I actually do think she's good in Vanilla Sky. She's playing like a similar character, but it works more in that movie.
Your body makes a promise line is one of my favorite movie lines, even though I'm not a huge fan of that movie.
I think she's so bad. She's like the weakling in, what's the Scorsese movie that
Oh,
she's in?
yes, Gangs of New York.
Yeah, she's like so bad in Gangs of New York, but you know, she has her moments.
Yeah, I kind of blame some of the writing on that too, although I love that movie.
I think she was just miscast. There's a lot of weird casting in that one.
True. Then they say he says Boyd is organizing the the bachelor party, and that's Robert Boyd, and that's going to end up being Christian Slater. Oh, we kind of get introduced, we see Christian Slater, and it turns out Cameron Diaz hates him, and she says he's a big ball of gas. And then it turns out Christian Slater's a real estate salesman, and we see him on the phone with a woman named Tina, saying he's calling her directly so he won't have to go through the agency. So that'll turn out to be the stripper / prostitute. And so I guess he knows her from previous things, and there are some customers that want to see the property, and he won't even let them set foot on the property at all while he's on the phone. I was like, that's odd that he's being mean to the customers.
Yeah, I didn't really understand that scene either, like other than just to show that he's kind of a dick or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And then Diaz also hates a mechanic named Charles Moore, who's the guy we already saw as one of the groomsmen, and we see him as a mechanic, and her reasons for hating him are that he's really quiet, and that he's a weirdo because he's really quiet. And he was played by a man named Leland Orser. That's that actor's name. And Jean Triplehorn, what is her name?
I don't know how you pronounce. I think it's Jeannie, right?
I think
Is
it
how
is
you pronounce
Jean,
it.
too.
I'm not sure that.
I always thought of her, I think that I thought her name was Janine, and then I can't get it out of my head. Jean, yeah. She and he got married after this. They met on the set of this.
Oh, weird.
She and Leland Orser, and then got married.
My dog is barking.
I hear this.
He's not in here, but he's like having a moment.
I like Jean Triplehorn. She's very hot to me. And
she looks so good in this movie too. And there's like a part where someone calls her like a fucking, what does he call her?
Yes, I wrote this down too, that she gets called like a slug or a frigid like swamp monster or something by Jeremy Piven.
Yeah.
And it's like, she's not a swamp monster at all.
Yeah,
she's miscast.
She looks like the best that she's ever looked in this movie. She looks so good. And him being like, your wife is disgusting or something.
It's just like, no, she's really not.
Especially because the man that she's married to is
Daniel Stern.
Merv from Home Alone.
Yes.
Or Marv or whatever. I can't remember. It's Merv or Marv, but Daniel Stern.
I was thinking Cameron Diaz, I've noted this many times as a viewer, she has a very large mouth. And I have a buddy named the Scram, and he has a real thing for large mouth actresses and large mouth women. He really likes them, and he loves Cameron Diaz.
Interesting.
And when she's talking about how she hates Leland Orser as Charles Moore, she says, he's like, what is the matter? She's like, I just don't see him in the big picture. And she starts complaining about how like he's gonna have sex with a prostitute not Leland Orser, but Jon Favreau will probably have sex with a prostitute at his bachelor party and will smell. And she's like, I will not be common. I'm a creature like no other. I'm a creature like no other. Just all of her dialogue, I was just like, oh man, this is really annoying.
All of the women in this movie are like very tragic, like not good roles for women in this movie. But to be fair, not really good roles for anyone.
No.
But
Then it turns out Favreau works with Piven. They're co-workers in the movie. We meet Jeremy Piven, who's his buddy. They're working cubicles side by side. And Jeremy
Piven, I just have to say, is so gross in this movie. Like, I literally is like dry heat. Like, he is so gross in this movie. Like, everything that he does is like so gross.
I thought his performance was pretty good, but Jeremy Pivening out. Was this the first movie where he really got to Piven out like this? I think he got to do some stuff and say anything, where he talks a lot, but he's just, he plays a terrible guy in this, but I thought that, he did the best he could with the material, pretty much. Although I suspect he maybe improvised a lot of his lines. I constantly wondered if he was making up what he was saying.
He's in that movie PCU too.
I've never seen that.
Oh, I've seen that movie like a lot of times. That movie was 1994, so like a little before this. But he like, I'm pretty sure he like, well, I don't know if he Pivens out, but he plays like a very Piven character in it. But no, it's just like his body language and stuff. Like he's just like thrusting and humping the hair and like later scenes and stuff. And it's so gross. Like, I just literally was like, I cannot take this character.
He has a weird thing in this scene where he has like I thought it was the club, like for your car steering wheel when he's in the cubicle. Then it turns out it has like suction cups, and he starts like putting it on his face.
I don't even remember that.
Like it's a piece of exercise equipment or something. It was weird. Then he has in his cubicle, he has a sign that says exit, and it reminded me of the Look Closer sign in American Beauty cubicle. And then he's telling telling Slater not to get married, or basically saying marriage sucks and stuff. And then Daniel Stern comes in as their grumpy supervisor, but I guess he's going to the bachelor party too, because he tells them they're meeting at his house in like several hours. And then it turns out he's Jeremy Piven's brother, and he also tells them he's not in a gay mood for the bachelor party, which will come into play later somewhat. Diaz, she calls Jon Favreau at work while he's trying to work with more Bridezilla stuff. And I was thinking, like, she doesn't seem to have a job. Does he support them both with this cubicle job? They're in Los Angeles. I was like, he must be doing really well in this job, because living in LA is expensive, and it doesn't seem like she works.
I think you must assume that if Jon Favreau is like dating Cameron Diaz in this story, like he must be able to support them both.
Maybe.
He must be supporting them. I think you have to assume.
Although you could also assume perhaps that with her personality in the movie, maybe
I was thinking that too.
It drags down like what guys would be with her. And
right,
then, I was also thinking, like, what'd you think Christian Slater's haircut in this?
This is everything about Christian Slater in this. I'm not going to give him a rating at this moment.
I was thinking maybe he hasn't had a good hairdo in a movie since Mobsters.
Yeah, this was not a good one for him.
So then we go to the Stern Triplehorn residence. This is where we first meet Jean Triplehorn, and everybody is smoking cigarettes, and she's like filming them with a video camera and telling them not to smoke in the van, and everybody's making jokes about smoking in the van, basically. And we see their kids. They have two sons, Daniel Stern and Jean Triplehorn do, and one of them is like, maybe we find out permanently has body issues.
It seems like he has like cerebral palsy, or like, is that the one?
Maybe.
I don't remember.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I think it is.
He has
I think
crutches that are like attached to his arms, and he has muscular dystrophy. I don't know. Then he has a karate headgear, and I had that same karate helmet for when I was in Taekwondo when I was a little boy, and it was a very comfortable helmet, I will say. Then they all drive to Vegas in this van, in a minivan, I guess, that is Daniel Stern's, and this is where we get a great line from Christian Slater telling Daniel Stern he drives like a Jew.
There's a lot of like Jew stuff happening in the car.
Yes. Then, there's a lot of maybe. Do you think Peter Berg is Jewish? Berg is kind of, we associate the end of names Berg as being Jewish. I don't know, but there's a lot of Jew stuff in the movie that I wasn't sure if it was like weird self-hating Jew stuff or if it was just plain anti-Jew stuff.
I would think that he must be Jewish, right? Like he has to be. Like first, he has to be. Otherwise, there's like more bizarre like Jewish stuff later. So like if he's not, it's like it would be very weird if he isn't. I'll say that.
True. And everybody, all the guys going to the bachelor party, they all have visible undershirts, which was the hallmark of 1990s men's fashion that I don't miss. And though there was actually, before this movie came out already, this is kind of late for the undershirts in 1998 because the movie Swingers is from 1996, and the movie Swingers started a comeback of A-shirts as undershirts for men, and just, as we call them, wife beaters. And so this movie almost was kind of a little late for that. But it just seemed crazy to me to see four guys wearing visible undershirts driving from LA to Las Vegas in sunny weather. It's like, man, it seems hot.
Did Jon Favreau write Swingers? Like,
yes. That's
his movie, right?
Yes.
It's a little weird that he would do that and then do this movie 2 years later.
Yeah, I think he was psyched to get work as an actor. He'd had so little success as an actor previous to Swingers. Just all of a sudden, I think he was like, hell, I'm kind of the lead in this movie.
Yeah, understandable, but like just kind of weird to do like two Vegas movies in like such a short time period.
One note, Leland Orser is coming out soon on a TV series of the movie American Gigolo that stars John Bernthal. I really like the movie American Gigolo. I have no real faith in a show of American Gigolo, though.
I've never seen it, but I do really like John Bernthal.
So does my dad. My dad thinks he reminds my dad of Fred Ward. My dad likes Fred Ward.
I don't know. I don't think I know who that is. I should Google him.
Yeah, Google Fred Ward. Jon Favreau wants to use the car phone, Daniel Stern's car phone, to call the chair people. And we get a bunch of debate about car phone rates. And I was thinking, at least this movie acknowledges that car phones cost a lot of money back then. Whereas in other movies, people just like talk on them like they're as rich as Croesus. And then we get them in Vegas. And there's like them walking in slow-mo, like in reveling, and then a bunch of partying and gambling. And then, it really reminded me of Swingers when Jon Favreau's calling Cameron Diaz from the casino to tell her how much he loves her and stuff. I was like, wow, this is just like something that would be in Swingers.
Swingers is like the far superior movie, in my opinion, obviously, but
it is.
Another thing that's super confusing to me about like these scenes is like these guys, like, okay, this is another theory that I have. First of all, if you plan to go have like a crazy time, like you're like, oh, I'm gonna go to Vegas and have like a crazy time, like you're not gonna have a crazy time. No one ever has a crazy time in Vegas. Like I stand by that. Unless you're like super rich or like you like don't have a crazy time in Vegas. Like no one has a crazy time. Like I was hanging out with this guy over the summer and like he went to Vegas for a bachelor party and it was so boring. And I'm like, yeah. And he was like talking about trying to find Coke and stuff. And I was like, of course you can't find Coke in Vegas because like the demand for it like far exceeds the supply. Like it's hard to find.
They find Coke in Vegas.
Yeah. And that's my thing. I'm like, how did these people get all these drugs? I mean, unless they brought them. But do these seem like people who are going to be doing like mountains of Coke and like engaging in this kind of behavior? Like
Not
they're like
really.
dorky losers. Like
no, only maybe
that's
Jeremy
another
Piven.
problem for me.
They're all then we go into their hotel room, which is massive, and they're all coked out and doing lines, and they're drunk and they're smoking weed, and they're just like are rambling about shit to each other. And I was like, we're gonna ask you if this made you want Coke.
No, nothing ever, like, this is my thing with Coke. Like, I'm not gonna admit that I've ever even done Coke because, like, let's just say I never have. But if I had, I feel like every single time that you do Coke, it's like a nightmare. It's always like the weirdest people that you've ever seen. You're like up late, you're with like the weirdest people ever. It's like always horrible. Someone always wants to like tell you about how they got molested or something.
That's kind of like how it happens with these guys.
Yeah, like I never...
Like all their conversations are terrible.
Coke has no purpose except for one, which is like if you're extremely, extremely wasted and you're like gonna throw up or something, that's the only purpose of it. Like I don't think it has any purpose like in and of itself. It's not like a good or fun.
Man, people doing Coke in the
like
movies
shit.
though makes me want to do Coke. Like when they were doing the lines, like I was like, oh, I wish I had Coke. I could do lines.
Never.
Then when they're talking, I was like, oh, this doesn't seem fun.
Yeah, I've never felt that way.
And Daniel Stern, coked out, is talking to Jon Favreau, and he's telling him that if anything happens to him, his kids need Jon Favreau, and Jon Favreau agrees to this. And now, they also say Jon Favreau's the godfather of the kids, but Daniel Stern's Jewish. Aren't being like a godfather, isn't that a Catholic thing?
Yeah, it's a Catholic thing, but maybe other people do it too. Like, I don't know.
I don't know
It's definitely
either.
A Catholic thing, but maybe other people do it
I've only
too.
ever heard of Catholics doing that. Then Stern said, but then when the stripper arrives when he's talking to Jon Favreau, and Daniel Stern says, excellent. And along with him saying the thing about not feeling gay at work, I wanted to point out that he says excellent about stripper because something comes up later that really confused me. So then we get the stripper comes in, and Slater's wearing shades indoors during this part. She starts stripping, and I guess I looked this up. She's played by a woman who is credited in this movie as Carla Scott, but is better known as Kobe Tai.
Yeah, I read she was like a porn actress or something.
Yeah, I guess she was a major porn star in the 90s, and she appeared in such films as Executions on Butt Row, Kobe's Tie, The Triple X Files 8, Vivid Girls Do Anal, ... Finally, Fillmore Butts Taking Care of Business, and Hard to Swallow.
Wow.
And
that's really a lineup.
And yeah, she strips and dances and gives them lap dances for a long time in this, and you didn't like it. I thought she was pretty hot.
I mean, she's super good looking, but like the men are just so disgusting, and like the way they're like behaving and like
what about
humping the air and stuff. It's so
Jeremy
gross.
Piven and Christian Slater's body acting during the scene. They're doing some crazy stuff.
They're like humping the air. They're like every
and,
time
like, gyrating and stuff is very
it
weird.
reminds me truly of being on Coke, where you're like on Coke and everyone's just like sweaty and manic and like
they were very.
It was
manic.
honestly like triggering. Like,
and she wasn't even giving them the lap dances. They were like alone in shots doing the crazy.
Yeah, it's just like when you do a bunch of Coke and you're just like sweaty and depraved or something. something like that's how these people were. That's like true to life, true to form.
They're playing that song Dirt by Death in Vegas. I'd never heard it before. That was a very crazy song. And then
Yeah, I can't remember if I've ever heard that song. I think so.
I noticed this too, that the stripper arrives right at the 15-minute mark of the movie. And I was thinking about that because Hunter pointed out in The Wizard that they break the kid out of the jail or out of the mental home or whatever at 15 minutes, which is like right on schedule for movies.
Yeah, when you're taking a screenwriting class, they call that the inciting incident,
Yes.
and they say it needs to happen at the 15-minute mark.
Yeah, it was right on schedule. They do this stuff, and they offer, I guess she's going to have sex with them for money. John Favreau turns it down, and Jeremy Piven's like, I'll take it, and he carries her away to the bathroom. Then they have this massive bathroom, and she and Jeremy Piven have a long sex scene where he has tons of dialogue about how hot he is and how...
He's so creepy, so gross, like sweaty coke guy, as if he would even be performing, like
That's
doing
a
that
good
much
point.
coke and alcohol. Excuse me.
Yeah, like he probably wouldn't
He
be
would
able
not.
to get hard.
No.
And then one thing I saw about this movie is that whole scene is improvised. All his dialogue and stuff. Doesn't that seem really unprofessional for a movie to like have a nudity sex scene just all be improvised and that long and stuff?
Absolutely. Like how uncomfortable. That's probably why it feels so like gross and weird. Like it feels really gross and weird.
Yeah, I guess he asked to do that, and they were the filmmakers were like, we don't think Carla Scott can hang with you as an actor. And he's like, no, once she's naked, she's gonna be great. And then yeah, so they let him just run with whatever he thought of. And
Crazy.
yeah, it was very crazy. And while they're having sex in the bathroom, outside the boys are roughhousing, watching WWF or something, some kind of pro wrestling event.
Yeah, some weird wrestling.
They're fighting with each other, and Orser lands on the big glass table and breaks it. And then we go in and we have Jeremy Piven naked. Did you enjoy that?
No, I didn't like at all. I did not enjoy like any of these like sweaty, coked up freaks like during the scene.
And he's having sex with Carla Scott, and her head slams up against a towel rack.
Which, I'm sorry, do you know how hard you would have to slam someone's head into something for that to like,
Yeah,
for
I was like,
this
this
to
is
transpire?
not believable.
No.
It was so unbelievable. I was like, even if it hurt her, she probably wouldn't die or get it smashed in that much. She would just be perhaps wearing permanently a martial arts helmet.
Well, yeah, you might have like a
And not because
concussion.
she's Asian either, Reno. I know what you're thinking.
Yeah, you know me.
Afterwards, when they tells them all that he messed up, and his acting was pretty good. He was like, "Guys, I messed up." After all his manic stuff, his hangdog look was kind of like all right. But when he's explaining it, and he's like, "The floor was really wet. Why was the floor really wet?" Daniel Stern asks that, and I was like, "Why? Yeah, why was the bathroom floor so wet?"
I didn't really understand that like scene either. Like, what is that implying?
I don't know. I mean,
Like,
at some
don't
point
get
they
that
poured a
either.
bunch of water all over the ground, is what I took from it. So the guys, they go in the bathroom and they see all the carnage of the dead girl. Christian Slater said the girl being dead and all the blood all over the thing and her naked, the fake blood attracted a bunch of flies. And she had to lay there with flies all over her.
Ew, that scene, yeah, I mean, that does not feel like comedic, like all the blood in that bathroom. Like it feels like a fucking David Fincher movie or something. Like it's not so much after this person dies, but after like the next murder scene.
Oh yeah, which I found pretty disturbing. So
I did too.
Slater talks Daniel Stern out of calling 911, and he lays out this whole case for them not calling the cops, and he tells them they should bury her out in the desert. And his plan is to dangle her out of the balcony to Daniel Stern's van waiting outside, and they take a vote, and everybody eventually votes for it. And
Which is insane.
how would you describe the art they have on the walls? I thought it was like Clowndinsky.
I don't even remember the art on the walls. Like, I just remember, like, there's a picture of Frank Sinatra or something.
Yeah, there's one of Don Rickles for sure, and with a big mouth, kind of like Cameron Diaz. And then Stern asks Slater if he's done this before, which, seeing the movie, he probably has. It's probably a very fair question.
Yeah.
And here's a question. The first question, though, is like, do you really think that this stripper, even though they set up that he called her directly, so no agency needs to know that she went there, but But is it believable that she would not tell somebody she was going to this place just in case something like this happened?
Yeah, no, that's not believable at all. At all.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know what was going on in the 90s, but I mean, that definitely feels like very unbelievable.
Yeah, like in fact, I didn't realize that he said Tina on the phone the first time I saw the movie. I honestly thought he said Tito. And so I kept expecting some pimp to come around and be like, play in later and be looking for them. But then when I watched the movie again, I was like, oh no, he's talking to her.
Well, that's one thing too that like this movie's like really missing is like the sense of danger from like people looking for these people. And like, you know what I mean? There's very little of that tension.
Yeah, there's actually only Daniel Stern's paranoia about that tension.
Yeah, and then there's like a newspaper article or something.
Yes. So then we have where the security guard's knocking on the door and wants to come in, and they're not letting him in, or they're arguing with each other. And I was thinking, why wouldn't they just close the bathroom door and put Jeremy Piven inside, since he has the blood, and put him in the bathroom and then let the guy in?
Yeah, and just say he's going to the bathroom. Like, he's not gonna walk in there on like some dude going to the bathroom. Like,
no.
So weird.
No, yeah, exactly. And then so the guy, he opens the door himself, the security guard, and comes in and like tells them all they've been making a lot of noise and stuff, which is exactly what you would assume he would be there to do. And this had one of the few laughs in the movie to me, is when he's talking to them. There's just a weird shot where Jeremy Piven, there's a photograph of Wayne Newton on the wall behind Jeremy Piven, and Jeremy Piven looks back at it for a second. I don't know why, almost like to look to like Wayne Newton's, like either it's paranoia like on being coke and being like, who's this guy behind me, or maybe he's looking to Wayne Newton for help. And either way, it made me laugh. I didn't know why he did it, but it did make me chuckle. And
something in this movie made me laugh, but it didn't come until the end, so I'll have time to think about what it was.
And so then the guy sees the broken table and says that's going to cost him a lot of money, and Christian Slater gives him some money, and he's like, what gets into you people? And he's like, lots of blood and drugs and alcohol. And he's like, that's cool. And then he's about to leave, and then of course he sees the stripper through the crack in the bathroom, through the open bathroom door. He sees the dead stripper, and when he goes to look at it in there, Christian Slater grabs a wine cork, or a corkscrew rather, and stabs him repeatedly. And I was like, would this kill this guy either?
I don't know, but this scene was like super, super disturbing. Like, this was like one of those scenes like in the movie where I'm like, this is like not funny at all. Like, this is like super sick and disturbing or something. Like, they lock him in the bathroom and he's like screaming and like,
you hear his
dying.
like all his scream for a long time and thrashing about. Well, they're making like comedic business holding the door closed.
While he's like bleeding to death and dying. It's fucked up.
I'm sure that shot of them in front of the door was in the movie trailer. It was like a total movie trailer shot. And I was like also thinking that, these are the first pretty much, I mean, we briefly saw an Asian guy in the office as an extra, but like we haven't seen any other black or Asian or anything characters in this movie, and they've both been just like brutally murdered.
And the way people treat them is like super disturbing. I'm just like, that's how these feel. Like, these people are so fucked up. Like, I don't know, like none of them have any kind of like conscience, or like, I mean, I guess you could say like Daniel Stern, but like not even him really. He's just paranoid about getting caught. Like, none of these people are like disturbed by just
he does later on think the security guard might have been a father. The bad people doing bad things. This was also kind of, I think, trying to capitalize on, or just inspired by, people saying the people in Seinfeld were really bad people also. And just this was
I saw some Seinfeld comparisons, but this is like very dark Seinfeld.
Yeah, this is different. There's another thing about this too, where it's like people would also complain that weren't into Seinfeld, that Seinfeld was just a show of people yelling at each other really manically. And there are a lot of scenes in this movie that are just people yelling at each other in a very manic fashion. And I was like, this movie just like took that really like, it's like, that's what we should be doing.
Yeah, it just does not nail like the tone like necessary to like pull this off as funny. Because, I mean, I think, like, I read this review that, like, Roger Ebert did of this movie. He hated it. It's like he wrote, like, Beyond the Valley of the Dolls or something, which is, like, one of my favorite movies of all time. And, like, Beyond the Valley of the Dolls is, like super like sick and stuff, but like also like really funny. And so it's like that's like a movie that really like nails like, I don't know, like sick, like weird, like dark comedy or something. But like this movie just, yeah, like the tone is really wrong. And then yeah, like after they go into the
what
bathroom.
did you think? I'm sorry. What did you think of his review? Because I didn't read it, but I saw that he and Siskel put it on their top 10 worst movies of 1998. But their reasoning, I really disagreed with their reasons for not liking it. Like they said it shouldn't have been a comedy, which I was like, no, the problem is it's just not funny, what they do with it. And B, they said that Peter Berg did a good job directing it. And I was like, I think that the directing is one of the worst parts of the movie.
Yeah, like he said that Christian Slater in particular was like really good in it, and I'm gonna have to kind of disagree there as well.
Too.
Yeah, like a lot of his stuff was like praising the directing and the acting, which yeah, I'm gonna have to disagree with that. I think this actually could have been like a decent, if like they had taken it in a more like serious tone, like if this was like a more serious movie, like it could have been better. Maybe just because yeah, the way it's filmed really is like a serious kind of like dark thriller David Fincher kind of thing.
I think the movie just had a real paucity of ideas for gags.
Or yeah, like it could have nailed the tone a little bit better to be like a dark comedy, because it just doesn't, for me, yeah, this movie doesn't read as comedy at all. And like one of the people that I read who went to see it was like, yeah, I went and saw this in a theater and like not one single person laughed even one time.
When they go in there and the security guard's dead, you'd think he would have used something in the bathroom to try to stop his bleeding, but instead he just looks like he just thrashed around everywhere. And then I also just, no one has any toiletries in the bathroom either. There are no shaving kits or anything, which wasn't as crazy to me. Just the guy wouldn't try to do anything to save himself.
Well, he's a huge guy too, and yeah, I think like it seems like he only stabbed him like once.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe he did more than once, but it was like a little corkscrew thing. You're like, would he really bleed out? Like, I don't know.
I guess it would depend, like where someone stabbed you.
True.
I guess you could bleed out if someone guts.
As we learned in Gangs of New York, it matters where you stab someone. Yeah, so then they're going to, I guess, Slater threatens to kill Favreau here after the guard. And he's like, if you call the police, I'll kill you here right now. And I was like, man, if he said that to me, I'd be out. I'd be like, no, thanks, I'm turning you in.
Yeah.
But
it's so weird
here.
that they all just kind of like co-sign on this. Like, yeah, let's just like bury these people. Like, and then, yeah, okay. And then so the next scene is like,
they go to the
them
store.
Like chopping up these fucking bodies.
Now, first
and,
we have the slow-mo shots
too.
of them walking in the store with the different implements and stuff and the suitcases to clean up and chop up the bodies that are meant to kind of contrast with the shots of them having fun in Vegas, but they're also clearly meant to look cool in a men on a mission Reservoir Dogs way.
Yeah, this to me had like kind of like a Coen Brothers vibe too, like Fargo, like yeah, chopping up the bodies.
See,
and, like,
I think
trying to be
this
sick
is
in
where
that way.
they could have had a lot of comedy they didn't think of that would be in a Coen Brothers or Adam Sandler or Woody Allen movie or something where, like, for example, which guy's the best at packing and guys debating on what the best way to efficiently pack is. The weird things of what things they would need to buy at a store and things like that. Yeah. I don't know. I was just kept thinking like, this is actually an opportunity to have jokes. And you're not having any jokes. You're just showing overhead shots of dudes doing like action. Like it was more like Scorsese or something.
Well, and you could have mined like a lot of comedy like out of that security guard, like trying to get him like not to find the body or something. They didn't do that either. Like there's just a lot of like missed opportunity where like things could have been funny, but alas.
So then they drive out to the desert with Santana playing and they dig holes in the desert in the night. And Daniel Stern says they can't bury them like this because they can't mix their body parts together because of Jewish law. Says that bodies have to be whole, so that it's like they're still not going to be whole, but he says you can't mix, like, I guess his point is that you can't put parts of Carla Scott with parts of the security guard.
And it's like, this is supposed to be funny, I guess.
Yeah, I was like, this is what we have instead of, yeah. So then they agree to unpack it and redistribute the people. And they have a debate about whether or not they're Asian Jews, because like, yeah, do we think these characters were Jewish or Asian or something? Also, this thing with the security guard, like when they're cutting him up and stuff, and we have the thing later about whether or not he had kids, that if you you saw like, you see his arm and stuff. If you saw his him having a wedding ring or something, that would be maybe something to talk about or have. This is also where we have Leland Orser panicking with the body parts. I was like, man, this guy's a master of panic, but not a master of acting. It's friggin' terrible. They bury the guys, and Christian Slater gives this long speech about how proud he is of everybody and that what they did was bad and stuff. And I think maybe just Leland Orser brings up that Christian Slater has been doing all this self-help stuff, which I was thinking they should have brought that up earlier in the movie too. It's like had something with him and self-help stuff.
Yeah, that's what he should have been doing instead of like for some reason like telling people to get off his property or something, like doing some self-help shit or something, listening to tape or something.
That line about him and the self-help stuff was Christian Slater's favorite line in the script, he said.
I'm sorry, my dog is literally like stepping on a broken glass.
Whoa.
Stop it.
And this is also where Daniel Stern's freaking out again, and they tell Daniel Stern that he has no friends, but he's literally there with his friends.
Sorry, my dog is like, yeah, no, he's fine. He's just like, he wants to sit under the desk that I'm sitting at, and like trying to get under the desk, he's like knocking shit down, and like he knocked my phone off the desk and stuff, but he's fine.
Then they say that Daniel Stern is like a closeted gay guy. And it's like, has he done anything in the movie that seems remotely gay?
No.
In fact, he's the only one of them that's married and has kids. That's why I pointed out that when the stripper shows up, he's really into it. He's like, excellent.
I was just going to say he doesn't seem gay or do anything that seems gay. Like,
no. Like maybe they could have had him do something with the packing or something that would have been weird and gay or something.
And this was like the 90s where you could like, there's moments in this movie where they like make fun of his children's like physical disability. Like you could have like done some shit to make him seem like stereotypically gay that you could have gotten away with like 20 years ago.
Yeah, in the same interviews where I was watching where Peter Berg said that he came up with the idea on yoga, the lady, she asked him if there was anything he thought was too dark that he decided he wouldn't go there and stuff. He's like, well, I thought of a lot of dark gags with the children, and then eventually thought I wasn't comfortable going there, and we didn't do them. I was like, man, I bet those were so funny. If this is what made the movie.
Man, that's fucked up. Like, that's like crazy to even hear. Like, well.
Yeah. So then we have the Jon Favreau's prayer over the dead bodies. They do a prayer before they leave. And I thought this prayer could have been funnier too. Like he could have been like, and please God, do not let the police catch us.
Totally. Yeah.
And then we go to later, and Daniel Stern says that he feels like the guy probably had kids. And I was thinking they should have done that earlier when they were chopping them up. Yeah, then he could have had a wedding ring or a wallet with photos in it of kids or something. And they didn't think of anything. And then it's like the movie has to ignore all reality to make us think they could even get away with killing the security guard. This is my biggest problem with the movie's plot, is that how could they possibly think that they could get away with killing the security guard?
Yeah, he has to be on camera, like going into that room and like.
And he probably, there had to be a complaint. And
they knew he was going up to that room specifically.
Yeah, and there have to be hall cameras too, even in the 90s, of course. Yeah, it's just so crazy. And the guy never comes out of the room, and he just disappeared from work that night.
Yeah, it's like ridiculous.
So, are the police that racist? They just wouldn't look for a black guy.
This movie was ahead of its time in that way.
Weird. Yeah, but instead of any potential comedy with any of that stuff we just talked about, instead we get this hilarious scene of the tux fitting where Cameron Diaz is just like talking to each of them for a long time about their tuxes. Yeah,
like everything like in this movie is just like that's supposed to be funny. It's just like the corniest like women are bitches. Am I right?
Yeah, women.
It's so like it's just like the most like corny type of humor or something, like the corniest, just like take my wife kind of.
Yeah, it's just
like bullshit, but
women are awful.
Not funny at all.
I think Diaz has more lines in this movie than anyone else by the end, probably. She just like anytime she's on camera, she just never shuts up. Maybe Piven.
Yeah, it's like Cameron Diaz's lines are just like stupid stuff. Like she cares about like the dumbest shit. Like what she gets angry over is just like the chairs aren't padded, and like it's just like that's the comedy about like she like goes over like stuff in like the minute minutest detail
Oh
and like
yeah,
the
when he
shit that she
calls
gets
her,
mad about.
when he called her in from Vegas and he was drunk, she was like going over the chair placements, and he's like, "Are you nesting?" And she's like, "I'm nesting, yeah." They're back in town, of course, in L.A., and there is a story about the security guard missing that's in the paper. I was like, "Is this an L.A. paper? Did Daniel Stern buy a Vegas paper at
Yeah,
the
that's
newsstand?"
confusing to me too. I'm like, is this in the news in LA, or like where did this paper come from?
At any rate, he's paranoid that the cops are onto them, and he brings this up in like an office at their work or something. And this is where like the movie, there are a couple times where I think the movie forgets its own movie too. And then one of them is right here where Jeremy Piven they call Christian Slater and like have all these like they're all flipping out about the newspaper article and stuff, and Jeremy Piven's like, "They have my credit card." Did you catch that line? It's never brought up again, but he says real fast, like, "They have my credit card." And I was like, what? Maybe they should have brought that up earlier too, if that's true. That would have been something to think of when they're in the hotel.
Something to like bring more tension to this movie, that you're worried that there's no moment in this movie where you're like, oh, these people are going to get caught for these murders. Like there's literally none of that. Like none of the there's no tension period really, but none of the tension comes from like, these people are going to get caught.
Yeah, you're right. Like all of the rest of the movie at this point is just dealing with their consciences.
Well, and like, is
a
this
10
wedding
Little
going to
Indians.
go forward? And it's like, who gives a shit about that? Like, who cares?
Or will the wedding be held up are the big questions. And no, not will the cops show up is never a thing. So then like Slater beats up this sign, and that's when I started thinking about John Cusack. I was like, John Cusack beating up this sign, I could see him wringing a laugh out of this somehow, but it's not funny in this movie. And then we have like, sirens. Daniel Stern is in the minivan he's all like frazzled and angry, and his kids are singing this song. Could you even make out what they were saying?
No, I couldn't make out what they were saying, but he was like, the kids are singing that sick song, and then like the wife is like, you taught it to them. But I couldn't hear
I had
what
no
they were
idea
saying.
what they were saying. I rewound it many times.
Yeah, I couldn't hear it either.
They pull into a gas station. He's frazzled and he pays at the pump, is pumping gas, and he sees like police and impending signs of his being caught everywhere, like all around him. He's just being paranoid, and there's like some guy pumping gas that he's imagining is probably an undercover cop or something, and he's like looking at his van and stuff. The guy asks him, "Hey, how do you like your minivan?" I was like, that's a weird fucking question.
This scene is like funny. I did like laugh in this scene just because like it's so bad. Like it's so bad. Like the acting is so bad and like so hysterical, and it's so like slapstick. So like I did laugh at this part, but not that I think it's like per se like intentionally funny.
Yeah, I mean the line of like when she wants him to go in so he can buy the kids whizzers, which I thought were those like toys where you pull the cord out and they whiz around. And I was like, what kids would be excited about those in 1998? But it turns out they were fake candy.
Yeah, it seems like it was supposed to be Twizzlers.
Yeah.
I don't.
He goes in and looks at candy, but it was kind of funny. Like, I didn't actually laugh because I was really annoyed with the scene. But I was like, this isn't the worst line where he's like, the point of paying at the pump is that you don't go in.
It's just funny when he's like, because his acting is so fucking hysterical when he starts like falling all over.
Yeah,
the
good Coca-Cola placement when he falls all over and knocks over that whole display of Coke products.
Yeah, like he goes wild and is hysterical and like knocks over like everything in the store to the point that like one of the funniest things to me, like have you ever watched just like videos where like an animal gets into like a liquor store or something?
No, it sounds good though.
Like some animal gets into like a liquor store. I remember watching like some GIF or something like on Tumblr or something back in the day, and it was just like, I don't remember what kind of animal, maybe like a deer or something. Like a deer gets into like a liquor store and just knocks over like everything and just destroys like the entire store, like every single bottle. And so I think like this kind of made me laugh because it reminded me of that a little bit. But
it's almost like a literal bull in a china shop.
Yeah, but it didn't, it's just funny because it's so stupid. But
We go from this to their wedding dinner, which is usually a rehearsal dinner, but we don't see the rehearsal, but that's fine. We have the dad of Jon Favreau giving a speech, and he has these huge blown up childhood photos of Jon Favreau and allegedly with Christian Slater, and they look nothing like Jon Favreau. It's like a blonde kid until finally they show one of Jon Favreau as a football player when he's a kid that's clearly Jon Favreau, and like a pretty hefty Jon Favreau kid. And then the dad points out that the kid doesn't have, that young Jon Favreau doesn't have the jersey on for the team. He's wearing like football pads and stuff. And it's like, it was really weird to me. It was like they were clearly like apologizing for using a real photo of Jon Favreau that didn't match the team before. And I was like, no one's going to give a shit that he's not wearing the jersey of the team in the photo. So you don't have to explain that.
That scene is so like weird and unnecessary. Just like this whole entire scene.
Yeah, and Stern's panicking in the wedding rehearsal dinner, and he leaves, and they all follow him outside to like calm him down, which I guess kind of makes sense. And then Diaz and Favreau's dad run out too, pissed that Favreau ran out on the rehearsal dinner. And this is where, you know, they kind of calm them down, but then Piven and Stern get in a big argument. And this is where Piven calls Triplehorn a frigid swamp hog.
Oh yeah, okay, I like wrote it down what he said and said like,
I was like, she's a fucking goddess.
That she's a swamp hog.
Yeah.
And I'm like, excuse me. Yeah, she's like, in my opinion, more attractive than Cameron Diaz.
Me too. Oh, yeah.
And she's married to Merv from Home Alone. Like, excuse me.
And Piven talks about how much he hates the minivan.
Yeah. This scene is like psychotic. Like, absolutely psychotic.
Yeah, literally. And that he drives away in his car, then gets so mad that he decides to turn around and smash his car into the minivan head on and just ruin it. And at the last second, Daniel Stern jumps in front of it to get him not to do it and is smashed terribly by Jeremy Piven. Then I guess they take Daniel Stern to the hospital and claim it's an accident to the cop there. And he says that people said they were arguing, and they're like, no, there was no argument. There is a funny line in this scene, but it's only funny if you've seen the movie Copland recently or remember the movie Copland really well. Is that the officer, his name's Randone, and there's a part where Christian Slater's doing his part of the thing where he's explaining it all and trying to play it off like the cop's being really insensitive in this moment to talk to them this way. He says, he's like, you're being kind of insensitive, Officer Randone. And if you've seen Copland, Peter Berg plays a cop named Randone. And there's a part where he's being attacked by some kind of criminal played by Method Man. And Method Man says Officer Randone really enunciated like that, where he's like, Officer Randone! And I was like, oh, that's kind of funny. They must have been talking about it on the set or something, because that Copland, I think, came out maybe the year before this or something. They may have been making fun of the way Method Man said it. But if you haven't seen Copland recently, it's not that good of a line. Then I guess Daniel Stern dies in the hospital, but beforehand he whispers something to Triplehorn. They meet at the guys. Then they go to Johnny's cafe and discuss things like what they think Daniel Stern said to Triplehorn. And it's the Johnny's that's by LACMA. Have you ever seen that place when you're in LA?
I don't think so. It's by what?
It's by LACMA. And then you see a sign for a 99-cent store behind it, and there still is a 99-cent store behind it. It's very noticeable because it has like I don't know what you would call its kind of architecture, but it's a very noticeable building, and it's closed. It's been closed since the year 2000, but I guess it's a World Conservancy Heritage Site since 2013, and people still film movies there and TV shows there, but you can't eat there.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't think so.
Jeremy Piven's freaking out. They're all in this car afterwards talking. Christian Slater's giving this big speech about how he loves them all and stuff, and how they can make good come from this. And there's this weird bagpipe music on the score during this scene. Did you notice that?
I don't remember the bagpipe music. I just remember the like jazzy, like goofy music.
Yeah, this is weird. I was trying to figure out, like, it didn't have like, this is my problem sometimes with Stuart Copeland scores and the music, is that they kind of feel like they're made to be, like you were saying, this movie shouldn't have this jazzy music and stuff, but I feel like oftentimes people use his music as kind of almost like counter programming to the plot of the movie. Like Rumblefish is this black and white gang movie and stuff, rural gangs or semi-rural Oklahoma teenage gangs, and it has this like kind of reggae kind of upbeat score and stuff, and it's very opposed to the actual action. But in this scene, there's this bagpipe music, and I think it's Stuart Copeland doing it, and I was like, is it supposed to be like Christian Slater's inspiring them like Braveheart or something? But the actual music didn't seem to be like it was swelling or building in any way with what he was saying. It was just kind of around, and I was like, this is very weird. But then Christian Slater kisses Jon Favreau on the lips in this scene.
Oh yeah, that
Which
was like a
just out
scene
of
where I was
nowhere.
like, this is so like weird and like off-putting or something. I like hate that scene.
You know what other movie Stuart Copeland did the music for? Talk Radio.
Oh yeah.
He did several Oliver Stone movies, really. I think. He did Wall Street. I know that much.
I mean, I love The Police actually like so much. They're, like,
Interesting. So does
I
Boz
actually love
Gravidson.
them.
I'm not a fan.
I'm a big fan. I know like most people are not.
I disagree. I think most
Fans,
people
but I
are.
don't.
I think people love the Police, and I'm the
Most of the
minority.
people that I know hate, like literally hate them. Like my best friend hates them so much
Yeah, I'm not a big fan.
that I love them.
Then we go to the funeral of Daniel Stern, who died in the hospital, as we said, and you hear like what's supposed to be a woman crying, but I think you know well before they show it that it's going to be Jeremy Piven crying. But even so, I still did think his woman-like crying was pretty good. There's a rabbi, and they're all wearing yarmulkes except for Slater, so I guess everybody was Jewish.
I actually don't mind like Jeremy Piven like as an actor. Like I think he's good at like the roles that he plays. Like just in this movie for whatever reason, I was like so grossed out by all of these people. Like all of my notes are just like, these men are so repulsive. Yuck, yuck, yuck. I'm throwing up in my mouth, disturbing and gross. I don't even understand this movie. Is this supposed to be funny? Like, I don't mind Jeremy Piven, like, usually, but just in this movie in particular, he just really grossed me out, I have to say. I think knowing that he got, like, Me Too'd and stuff, and then seeing his, like, gross, like, groping and, like, it just was, like, ugh, I don't know.
When I first moved to LA, a buddy and I, we got drinks with this lady who was a contestant on Bachelor in Paradise, and her agent, and they were telling us that she was starting to date Jeremy Piven just to be shot by paparazzi and be seen. So she was getting love conned.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Oh, the rabbi that is doing the service at the funeral is Jeremy Piven's dad in real life.
Oh, interesting.
And we get Jeremy Piven just starts flipping out all crazy at this funeral and throws himself back on the coffin as the camera pulls away overhead, and that shot will be mirrored at the end of the movie, and of him just freaking out. Then we have a part where Jon Favreau tries to convince Cameron Diaz to delay the wedding, and this is where Jean Triplehorn calls them and says she's read this note that she got from Daniel Stern, and that brings the guys back together to discuss the note and what to do about Jean Triplehorn. But they go back to Johnny's for their meeting after Jeremy Piven freaked out in there before and like everybody was staring at him. Does that seem smart?
I mean, yeah, I'm surprised they would even let him back in there.
Yeah, but yeah, if you're like worried about getting caught for murder and a guy freaks out about killing his brother in a place, and then they just go right back there. And then this was also the coffee shop. Johnny's was the coffee shop in Reservoir Dogs. It was the coffee shop in The Big Lebowski. It was the coffee shop in the class. It was in the movie Midnight Madness, which featured Leon the Game Master. And it was also another movie that had double M's was Miracle Mile, and it was in that. And Peter Berg was in Miracle Mile as a drummer in a band, which Stuart Copeland was a drummer in a band. So many connections.
And my favorite, Phil Collins, the drummer.
Yeah, it's true. Phil Collins was a drummer in a band, a good band, but I do like Genesis.
I love Genesis. I love Phil Collins.
I like Phil Collins too.
We'll talk about that some other time.
And then Favreau tells them about her finding the note, And this is the first line of this scene. This is the second time where I think the movie forgets what it said, like with the credit card. He says that the note said that the woman was buried 40 miles outside Vegas. Did you catch that?
No.
Yeah, after this, they do the scene, and like the first line of the scene is he said the woman was buried 40 miles outside Vegas. Like that was in the note. Then later on, that's just totally forgotten. That's never brought up again. But this scene did have my favorite line of the movie, as far as the one that I thought was really funny, is when Leland Orser asks Jon Favreau if Gene Triplehorn believed his lie to her, whatever he said, and he's like, I don't know if she believed me. He's like, you can tell if people believe you. People know if people believe them. And he says, well, I don't have that skill, but if I did, I'd say she in no way believed me. And I thought that was really funny.
Yeah. I mean, his acting is actually, he's definitely the best and most competent actor in this movie, for sure.
Yeah, that was really good, yeah. It is funny, like, that he pretty much now he's a big director. Like Peter Berg, who went on to be a big director.
What did I see that Peter Berg, also wrote? That was really surprising to me. He wrote, he directed Friday Night Lights,
yes,
right?
And then the TV show as well. He was a pilot TV show.
Have you ever watched the TV show Friday Night Lights?
No, I've only seen the movie.
I have watched the TV show, and I just asked because it's a show that everyone kind of loves. I know that Kim Gordon from Sonic Youth and Bret Easton Ellis, they love that show, and a bunch of people love it. And I watched it one time and I had the flu, and it's really crazy. So I just wanted to see if you had watched it and what you thought of it.
No, I remember the book was massive when I was in junior high. Right at the end of junior high, the book was a big bestseller. Then when I was in high school, these sisters started going to my high school, when I was in senior year, that were from that school, Permian, and I went to senior prom with one of them.
Oh, interesting.
Odessa, Texas. But yeah, that book was huge. And then the movie came out, and I went and saw the movie at the theater, and I thought it was okay. It was better than this. I remember the main thing I remember about the movie was that Derek Luke was in the movie as the really flashy kind of diva running back that gets hurt or something. And then in the same year, I think he was in the movie Spartan, the David Mamet movie, and I didn't realize it was the same dude. And I was like, man, that guy Derek Luke is really good. And now he's with all the roles for black dudes and stuff. He isn't a big deal, and it always surprises me that Derek Luke isn't a bigger star. I was like, man, he's really good.
The show Friday Night Lights, in my opinion, isn't good per se. But it's really, I don't know. It's one of those things, once you start watching it, you kind of can't stop watching it, but it's like Degrassi or something.
Well, the one guy's famous from it right now. That's the breakout role of the guy that's the FBI agent in Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah, he's the coach dad in it. I can't remember what his name is right now, but yeah.
Yeah, his name is escaping me too. I met him briefly once when he was hanging out with Sam Shepard, and Sam Shepard was really drunk. Yeah, so then after they meet at Johnny's again, they go, I guess, back to somebody's apartment. Maybe it's either Slater or Favreau's apartment, and Janine Triplehorn's there, and she questions them all about what happened. Boyd's starting to tell her, which is Christian Slater, and then she's like, no, I don't want to hear from you. You're a liar. Fish, what happened? And I was like, oh man, here's a problem with this movie, is that the actors are very distinguishable from each other, but the characters are not that memorable. So when she says she wants the truth from Fisher because she doesn't believe Boyd, I had no idea which guy was Fisher. And it was my second time watching the movie when I was like, I don't know who the hell she's talking about. It turns out Jon Favreau is Fisher.
I was going to say, I don't even know who Fisher is, but by process of elimination, it must be Jon Favreau.
It was. Yeah. And he eventually, he thinks for a while, and suspense builds of what he's going to say, and he tells her he boned a prostitute, that Daniel Stern had sex with a prostitute in Vegas. It was what he was trying to cover up. And then Slater throws in that Daniel Stern loved prostitutes, which is kind of funny. But he's so evil. She's like, I don't believe it. But you can tell she kind of does believe it because it is something they would cover up. But this totally ignores the body being buried 40 miles outside Vegas line we heard in the previous scene.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Why would you? Yeah.
Never brought up again in the movie. And in the background, when she's freaking out in the kitchen and we get some more Coke and Diet Coke product placement in there. Then this is where the movie gets wacky. Slater comes up with this plan to have Jon Favreau make Cameron Diaz babysit Gene Triplehorn and Daniel Stern's kids, while Favreau and Leland Orser take Jeremy Piven to a bar to get drunk, which makes no sense to me. And
I don't even really remember like that section of the movie. Like I remember the scene where they're talking to her in the kitchen and tell her that he was having sex with prostitutes, but I don't really remember a scene where they make Cameron Diaz watch the kids. Like I don't remember that part.
This is like the part where we know that Boyd is going to do something to Gene Triplehorn. Is probably going to kill her. And so like Diaz has to watch the kids, and why Favreau wouldn't be there, but instead Favreau and Leland Orser take like Jeremy Piven to a bar and get him drunk, because that was the other part. Christian Slater's like take him to a bar and get him drunk and calm him down and get some drinks in him, because he's been freaking out. This one he's been saying that goosed thing over and over again, Piven has, and he's been really freaking out. And then he's like, I'm gonna go talk to Gene Triplehorn or something. And so we go from that to the bar, and Jeremy Piven talks about hearing a buzzing in his skull. Oh yeah, Cameron Diaz freaks out again when she's with those kids, and I was thinking that maybe the buzzing in his skull is Cameron Diaz's voice. They're at the bar, and then Christian Slater's not with them. He's at Gene Triplehorn and Daniel Stern's house, and she's asleep. I was wondering, what time is it? I don't know. Maybe she would just be asleep anyway, but he creeps in on her asleep. And this is like, started imagining how Cameron Diaz might play other characters in the movie, like her delivering this speech that Jeremy Piven has in this scene about the Wahoo sparkler thing and the dad and the sparklers, or her doing Gene Triplehorn's speech of coming to grips with being told that Daniel Stern loved whores. And I was like, man, it really made me appreciate the other actors. Just, she's so bad. When Jeremy Piven starts talking about the Wahoo sparkler thing, I was like, Peter Berg just seemed to have no idea what characters should be talking about or saying to each other. He just knew they should be talking.
Yeah, I mean, like, to be fair to Cameron Diaz, like, the character is just, what can you really, like, the character just exists as like a gag of like a hot, crazy, like bridezilla. Like, it's just so corny. Like, I don't know, who's this shit like funny to or something.
I think
like,
she's bad even with that. I attribute it more to her doing 1 trillion movies a year and then just poor direction. It just seems like she just memorized the lines and that was it.
Yeah, for me, I'm just like, ooh, like, what could you really do here?
Yeah, I don't know that she could be good, but it's or great, but I definitely think she was bad, even in view of like, because all the characters are poorly written, but she stands out as the worst to me.
Daniel Stern kind of stood out as the worst.
Oh, really?
But, you know.
He really disappeared at this point. Like, he'd been in movies for a long time, and after this, I think he pretty much just like started being on TV shows or something.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like hate him, and obviously his character is supposed to be like the moral center of the movie or something, but he's just such like a buffoon or something. And he's so like goofy, and his acting is so like goofy that, you know.
Yeah,
his
crazy.
acting is the worst in my opinion, but you know.
He starred in a movie called Bushwhacked that I remember.
Oh, I kind
came
of
out.
vaguely remember that. That sounds familiar.
Got very, very bad reviews too. I remember because I think like they did some kind of weird local advertising in Oklahoma that you don't usually see for a movie, where they maybe went around in a semi truck advertising it or something with an ad for it on a truck instead of in lieu of movie trailers on TV or something. And the only other movie I remember doing that was the movie Showgirls, because the Daily Oklahoman would not run ads for Showgirls because it was rated NC-17. They refused.
Showgirls is my all-time favorite movie. I'm like a Paul Verhoeven fanatic. I love him.
Yeah, so they would have I would be on the street shooting hoops or something, all of a sudden the Showgirls truck would drive by. It was very strange. I guess Piven decides his moment, the Wahoo thing is that like his dad would say Wahoo when the sparkler is about to burn at its brightest before it burns out or something when they were kids, and he's going to have a Wahoo moment by turning himself in, and it's going to be his way of showing respect for the wedding and stuff. I was like, none of this really makes sense.
Oh yeah, I remember that now, and he's just like, after the wedding, like out of respect to you, it's just like, I don't know.
But then he
Why?
said that this was kind of funny that he said that Jon Favreau should maybe name his kid after him if he has a kid. I was like, that's kind of funny.
Why would he even, I don't know. I mean, like, I'm not even gonna go back in time to like talk about like why did he even like kill his brother and like all of this crazy
Yeah,
stuff.
I guess he did kill his brother by accident because he was trying to destroy the van.
But yeah.
That was,
I mean, but
the first time that happened, it was like, I don't know if I wasn't fully paying attention or something or invested, but I thought he killed his brother on purpose. But he clearly didn't mean to kill his brother. But it still is like, yeah, he went totally psychotic and tried to smash that van. So we have at least two like actual psychotic people because Boyd totally just murdered that security guard.
yeah, Christian Slater's like an absolute freak in this. And it's like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, is it implying that yeah, he just murders people?
I think
Like,
so.
that's his
That
thing.
he's just totally
And kind of
or
Cameron
maybe
Diaz.
that I think it's maybe implied that self-help makes people murder people, which could be
yeah,
funny if they
maybe.
did more with it.
Yeah, or like self-help just like encourages you to be like ruthlessly self-interested or something.
Yes, very possibly. Yeah, that I think that's what they were trying to say. Yes, but they didn't do a good job. Then
That could have been funny. Like, see,
Yeah.
I mean, that could have been like a funny idea.
we go now back to Jean Triplehorn. She wakes up while Christian Slater is about to murder her, and she bites his penis long and hard. The bite, not the penis. And I was thinking, I'm sure he's leaving no evidence. They have this long fight where she like kicks him in the face and stuff. And he eventually does murder her. But there's this long fight where I'm sure like there's no evidence he leaves around their house at all. Then he calls Fisher from their house and says she's resting but needs to see Michael, who is Piven. And they need to grieve as a family. So she's asking to see Jeremy Piven. Why he calls instead of her and stuff is very unknown. And somehow Fisher, Jon Favreau, doesn't put together that Triplehorn's been murdered, and now obviously he wants to murder Piven too. And it's very weird. Orser and Favreau drive Piven over to Triplehorn's house and have him get out and go in. They don't go in with him. They're going to wait outside. And Piven wants to go to Fatburger after they have their talk. And then he goes in there and Christian Slater shoots him to death. I guess like Christian Slater got dropped off there and didn't have a vehicle there.
Like, another thing about this is like it could have been funny if you feel like before every like murder takes place that it's like inevitable, like, oh shit, this happened and now, oh no, they're gonna like have to kill that person. But like none of the murdering like feels inevitable at all.
I think once Daniel Stern dies, you realize that people, or at least I thought after Daniel Stern died, that we were going to get into like a people were going to start dying off movie. But yeah, like the idea that they really have to murder these people. It's like, didn't it seem like they chilled out Jean Triplehorn and didn't need to murder her?
Yeah, like there's no like, oh shit, like this person has to be murdered now, because that would be funny too. Like if you're like, oh no, like I feel this sense that like that person has to die now too. But like they feel like it doesn't feel that way at all. It feels like the murders are just like almost for fun. Like just like I murdered someone and that was fun, so now I'm just gonna start like murdering everyone.
Yeah, and then Christian Slater comes out of the house and gets in the car and tells them that what they're going to say is that Jean Triplehorn was murdered by Jeremy Piven, and then Jeremy Piven shot himself. And when he does, he lights a cigarette and says she fought like a Comanche. And him getting in the car, like after the being fighting with her and lighting a cigarette, was another moment where I was like, man, I think John Cusack would have been better at that. Yeah, I was like, so what is the idea that Jeremy Piven walked to her house and then did all that? I guess. I don't know. Just the more bodies that pile up doesn't seem the more likely that police are going to look into all this and stuff.
Yeah.
And really, when they killed the security guard, instead of killing the security guard, which is obviously like Christian Slater went psycho, it's like, no, they really didn't have to chop up the body or anything. The only guy that had sex with a prostitute killed her on accident. And if they just hide the drugs, it's like, how much trouble would they really get in?
Yeah.
The whole movie doesn't make sense.
I mean, I don't even feel like they probably would have really gotten in trouble for the drugs. Like,
yeah.
I mean, did they do them
Prostitution's
all?
legal in Las Vegas.
Like, whatever trouble they were going to get in it, like pills in comparison.
Yeah. And then then we go to the will reading of Daniel Stern's character and Jean Triplehorn, I guess. Their will being read by this lawyer lawyer to Cameron Diaz and Jon Favreau. And I guess the guy that plays this lawyer that's reading the will, he was on Chicago Hope with Peter Berg for 33 episodes. And Jeremy Piven was a guest star on 2 Chicago Hopes. And Peter Berg's character apparently on Chicago Hope was named Dr. Billy Kronk. And I was thinking that Kronk seems like a good name for a Peter Berg character. And the will says that they have to take the kids. This scene wasn't bad though, where they get read the will. This was okay, because this is the part where like it starts out that you think that they get 500 G's, and then the guy's like, no, the house really wasn't worth that much, it depreciated in value, blah, blah, blah. And it turns out like after all kinds of money haggling, this is very Coen Brothers-y, that it turns out they get 14 G's in the kids.
Yeah, this is really like the end of the movie like gets more like it's like a Simple Man style. But the thing is, like, why would Cameron Diaz, like, after learning, like, she's still insisting, like, we have to get married.
Yeah, like, wouldn't she bomb out on the wedding at this point? Yes, that's what I was thinking too. Like,
I'm not. Like, if you were like truly like an evil person, I feel like, yeah, like being evil, you wouldn't be like, oh, I have to get married. Like, you would be like, get me out of this situation.
Yes. And the first time I saw the movie, I didn't catch the part where Jon Favreau was the godfather of the kids and had told him that if anything happens to him, he'd look after the kids.
Well, and it's not like you have to actually do that or something.
No.
Like, there's no like,
and it is
you could just be
on
like,
them
no.
getting married too. Like, it's like in this scene, the will reading's like, after you guys are married, you get the kids or something. And I was like, so he doesn't have to take them if he doesn't get married, and she doesn't have to take them? It seems like they just have a total out here, don't get married, and you don't get saddled with these like kids.
Yeah, and like you could leave your kids to someone, like be like, you need to take care of our kids. That's what, like, I mean, being a godparent is supposed to be like, you take care of the kids like spiritually or whatever, not like literally. And yeah, like you could leave your kids to someone, but they don't actually have to take them. You could just like things and they'll go into like foster care or whatever.
But
and
I didn't realize that Favreau did agree to do that earlier, so maybe he had some kind of...
Yeah, but you might agree to that and be like, oh
sure.
yeah, just to like ease someone's mind, and then like, of course you're not going to do it.
But at least they set it up. But here's where we're back, thing that Jon Favreau breaks down crying and tells Cameron Diaz the whole story, and she doesn't want anything stopping that wedding. She's totally doesn't care that all these deaths are happening and murders. She just wants to say, I told you so about the friends, and she's going to help cover up all these murders.
And then commit a murder.
Yeah. So then this brings us back to the first scene of the movie, where we're down to, we're not down to yet, but we see Leland Orser and Jon Favreau back on that couch in the back of the wedding chapel or the back of the church in their tuxes, and it's before the wedding ceremony. There's a shot of them doing some synchronized nervous leg bouncing that was kind of at least a thought. Then this is where Christian Slater comes in as he's the best man, and he demands the insurance money for committing all the murders. And this is where he also says he's been a lighthouse that's ever lit for Jon Favreau, and has this whole speech about being a lighthouse, and it was pretty terrible.
So weird.
And then Cameron Diaz kills Christian Slater with a lot of blood and violence. And this is where I was like, so I guess no one saw Christian Slater arrive at this wedding, or is going to wonder what the hell happened to him. How are they going to get away with this? And no one will place him there later? Yeah, it's insane. And then we see the kids there at the wedding and everything, and all the people, and the hot bridesmaids again we saw at the beginning.
I wouldn't even care, once again, like if this movie was super unrealistic or something, like if it actually was like good and funny.
Yes.
Like you would like,
I'd put up
that
with
would
a
go
lot
off
of
to the side.
Yeah, if it was just absurd.
But...
Yes. Yeah, if it was much, much funnier, I wouldn't care that it didn't make any sense. Like, I love Billy Madison as one of my favorite movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then we have the wedding ceremony. We find out, of course, that Christian Slater's not totally dead and is going to be slowly lumbering towards the ceremony from backstage, from back of the church. And it turns out he still has the rings, because they asked Leland Orser, who's the only... This is one thing where, like, we do get a shot of this, but I also felt like this moment could have paid off better, where on the one side there are 4 bridesmaids, and on the other side there's just Leland Orser. Orser as the only groomsman. And I feel like they didn't lean on that joke enough, or it just didn't play. But they did do it. They did do the joke, in fairness to them.
Oh, well, then I forget that, like, the way they get around that, I guess, is that it seems like Christian Slater, like, falls to his death or something. Like, the guy, it seems like he fell down the stairs. So I guess that's how...
does it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't
that's
really
how
read
you...
it that way. Yeah, but you're right.
That's
I guess
how I
you're
read
right.
it.
Because he does have to go, like, a ways and stuff.
Yeah, he falls down the stairs. So then it's like, oh, he died because he, like, fell down the stairs, not because Cameron Diaz, like, smashed his head in or whatever. Even though that seems easy enough to be like, well, he didn't die from falling down the stairs.
Well, even this is like, they tell Leland Orser to go get the rings. He knows he has to go get them off Christian Slater's corpse. Then Christian Slater isn't dead yet, but dies immediately, and he gets the rings off of him. No one asks, like, so when you went and got the rings, then it was off of the guy's dead body that fell down the stairs?
I mean...
And they get married. And is the one non-annoying lady in the movie is the lady performing the ceremony. And then there was a weird beat here that was okay from Cameron Diaz, where after the wedding, when they're talking about what to do with Christian Slater's body, where she wipes sweat from her armpits. Did you notice this?
I don't even remember that.
She gets like a little napkin or Kleenex or something and wipes sweat from under her armpits. And I was like, that was all right. And then, yeah, she demands that Christian Slater be taken to the desert and buried with the security guard, and they were just buried somewhere. And then she tells him to kill Orser while he's at it, and also kill the dog.
This made me so, like, genuinely upset. Like, I think this was, like, the worst part of this movie for me, like, seeing the dog, because I have, like, a cattle dog.
Oh, yeah.
In spite of the fact that someone in the comments of, like, one of the episodes thinks that I hate dogs, and I watch, like, Yule and torture videos for them.
You probably hate your dog, too.
I absolutely am obsessed with my dog. I love him. I love cattle dogs. Like, I've always had them. They're my favorite kinds of dogs. So the fact that it was like a cattle dog just really upset me.
Yeah, we forgot to bring up that Jon Favreau even had this dog, like, earlier in the movie. But also feels like the movie should have done more with the dog. That was another missed opportunity for some kind of comedy or personality, was we should have had more of the dog in the movie.
I didn't even know he had a dog earlier in the movie.
It got brought up early on, like when she's complaining about things about him or something. I don't remember exactly in what context. It's really early. But yeah, then she's like, well, you're at it, get rid of that dog. And you're like, why does she want to murder the dog? I could see why she wants to kill Leland Orser at this point. Aside from how that she said she didn't like him, it's like, yeah, he is the only other person that knows about the murders.
Yeah.
But the dog
and he really
doesn't know
adds
shit.
nothing to the story. But the dog, that made me truly upset.
He's just an awful human being, but he still loves her. Then we have this part where once again Santana's playing, and the dog, Jon Favreau, and Leland Orser are driving out to Vegas, and now in Jon Favreau's car, and they're still in their tuxes from the wedding, which is insane to me. I guess Leland Orser's gonna get murdered out here in the desert, and no one's ever gonna wonder why they were out in the... I don't know. So anyway, they bury Slater out there, and then he doesn't kill Leland Orser or the dog. They all just drive home together and then get in a head-on car collision. Oh yeah, this is where I was wondering about it, because it's like they went out there to bury a body, and then they get into this awful car accident, and we never find out what happens to the people in the other car. But we also don't find out if the police were ever like, why are you guys out in the middle of the desert on your wedding night in tuxes?
The scene where he's gonna kill him out in the desert, like, kind of reminded me of, like, Of Mice and Men or something, like Lenny, like, and that kind of made me laugh a little bit.
I remembered that the shot was in the trailer. That was one thing I remember, like, when he does the shot with him with the shovel when he's about to hit him. I was like, oh yeah, this was in the commercials.
That made me laugh a little bit. That's, like, one thing that kind of made me laugh. Cameron Diaz calls him, like, an R slur when she tells him to go murder him.
Oh, that's right.
And then, yeah, like, when he's gonna kill him, it's like Lenny from Of Mice and Men, kind of, and that sort of makes me laugh.
He's talking about, he's gonna, like, he wants to join the Big Brother program. Yeah, we have two parts in this movie where Leland Orser is talking about things he's gonna do with his guilt. One is he's gonna, like, go to Greenpeace, and here he wants to have a black little brother.
Yeah.
he says.
But anyway, so yeah, they get into a car accident. He doesn't kill them and he doesn't kill the dog.
Yeah, and he flies through the windshield in the car accident.
And that made me laugh a little bit too, because I laugh every time someone explodes out of glass.
You're right, you do. This was a prime for you. Then we flash to much later. We're in the yard of Favreau and Cameron Diaz, and she's now like a housewife with all kinds of cleaning supplies who's very harried. And Orser now is living the Christopher Lee Reeve lifestyle and lives with them, I guess, in a wheelchair as a quadriplegic and blows on a thing to move himself around. And the kids are just out of control jerks. And Jon Favreau has no legs below his knees at this point. And the dog is missing a leg too, I believe now.
Yeah.
And it's all just supposed to be really ugly and scary. And Cameron Diaz just loses all control of herself and is so fed up she runs out into the middle of the street and flops on her back like Jeremy Piven over the coffin. And she's just writhing and screaming as the camera pulls away into space. And that's the end of the movie.
End spoilers.
Oh, I streamed this movie on a site that recommended similar films at the bottom of the screen, and the movies it recommended were Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, which made sense, but then also Planes, Fire and Rescue, the children's cartoon, and a children's or family film called A Dog's Purpose.
That's very weird.
Yeah, and Siskel and Ebert, they had this among their worst movies of 1998 episode, and I'm going to list the other movies on it. We'll see which ones you've seen or how you felt about them. They had Very Bad Things. They had the movie Godzilla, the Roland Emmerich one.
Okay, I feel indifferent about the Godzilla movie. I remember thinking it was pretty bad, but like once again, just boring bad, not like...
I thought it was worse than Very Bad Things. I think it was much longer and more boring. That's the one thing about Very Bad Things was I didn't like it, but I thought it was fairly well paced. Like it didn't just straight up bore me to death like Broken Arrow or Godzilla.
I just, like, I hated Very Bad Things so much. Like, I hated it. This is my worst movie that we've done.
Oh, wow.
For this
I'm going to
podcast.
put it ahead of both Godzilla and Broken Arrow.
And
Then
yeah,
they-
I was gonna say that I actually think it's worse than Broken Arrow for me in a way. Like, just kind of worse because I just feel like it's, I don't know, like, I really don't like it.
Then they had the movie My Giant with Billy Crystal and George Murison, which I never saw.
I want to say I have seen that movie and like it's kind of cute or something, but I don't know. I might be thinking of a different movie.
Then they had Spice World.
Spice World is great.
I would say Spice World is better than Very Bad Things.
Spice World is definitely better than Very
Great,
Bad Things.
I wouldn't go that far, but I definitely thought it was better than Very Bad Things. It's at least like mediocre. Then,
At least like Spice World is coming from a place of just like fun and
Yeah,
stuff.
it's
Like this
super
movie is
crazy.
not coming from that place.
they had Jack Frost with Michael Keaton.
I don't think I've ever seen Jack
It's
Frost.
pretty bad, but kind of hilariously bad. I'd rather watch it than Very Bad Things again, actually. So I'm going to say Jack Frost was maybe on the level of Very Bad Things. Then they had Phantoms with Ben Affleck and Peter O'Toole, which I've never seen.
Never seen.
Then they had Deep Rising with Treat Williams, which I hated. I'm going to say I liked Very Bad Things more than Deep Rising.
That might be a movie that I've seen, but so like just don't. It's like Godzilla. Like I definitely saw Godzilla
Same.
like in the
It's
theater, but
exactly
just
like that.
don't remember like anything about it.
Lost in Space, the movie of the TV show, which I never saw.
I think I did see that too, and like remember it being bad, but pretty bad.
That movie to me is most notable as the movie that finally topped Titanic at the box office. Like Titanic
wow.
was #1 every week forever, and then finally the week Lost in Space came out, it did better than Titanic.
Oh, interesting. I saw Titanic. I don't remember, like I talked about this somewhere. I don't remember if I've talked about it on this podcast, but I like saw Titanic with friends like 8 times because everyone was so into like Leonardo DiCaprio. That was like everyone's crush of the moment when I was like 12. And I didn't really ever have crushes or anything when I was a kid, but I didn't want to seem weird. So I was like, yeah, I love him and I love Titanic. But I didn't even really like the movie very much, but I've seen it probably more than like any other movie.
I gotta pee. I'll be right back. Oh yeah, I forgot that in the end credits, do you remember that they played the Limp Bizkit cover of Faith?
Oh my God, I read that they played it in the movie, but I didn't see it and I didn't watch to like the very, very end credits when they must have played Limp Bizkit Faith.
They did, yeah. They also had, as worst movies of 1998, Ringmaster starring Jerry Springer. Didn't see it.
Oh, I don't think I've seen it either, but I do remember it.
Me too. Waterboy, which I have seen but don't remember that well.
That's Adam Sandler, right? I don't
Yeah.
remember remember.
I don't remember liking it much when I was.
I remember
when
it
was
being
new.
bad.
Me too.
Yeah.
But I remember having the funny part with the tattoo of Henry Winkler or something, or Roy Orbison tattoo or something. I forget.
Is that movie? It's hard to get like all
Yeah.
those movies confused that he made.
But I don't remember that being top tier Sandler, but I do remember that just being a massive box office hit. That I think was the first Sandler movie that was just like a huge hit, where he went on that run of huge movies, and that was the first one. I think that it came after Wedding Singer, which did okay, and then Waterboy just made a ton of money. Basketball was one of their worst movies of the year, which I never saw.
I do remember seeing it. That's like the Trey Parker and Matt Stone movie, right? Like I do remember seeing it, and like when I saw it, I was like once again, yeah, like 12 or something during this time. So like I remember kind of liking it as a 12-year-old, but I think it's like a 12-year-old movie, like, you know?
Probably, yeah. I never saw it. Then when I did see, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. That was terrible.
Yeah, not a fan of either. Not a fan of any of the I Know What You Did Last Summer franchise.
They did bring up a good point that the movie should have been called I Know What You Did the Summer Before Last, instead of I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. Then they had Odd Couple 2, didn't see it.
No.
Lethal Weapon 4, did see it. It sucked.
I don't know if I've ever seen Lethal Weapon 4, probably, but I'm not a fan of the Lethal Weapon franchise either.
Then the top worst movie for Siskel of 1998 was Patch Adams.
Okay, I did see Patch Adams,
It was terrible.
but
Then
don't really remember much about it, other than
Ebert's
like
worst
Robin Williams
movie.
and Kids with Cancer or something.
Yeah, it was like Healing Power of Laughter movie.
Oh, yeah, that's not
It was
good.
bad. It was really, really bad. But I do remember I saw it at the theater, and there was a guy in the theater that would just like thought it was the funniest movie he ever saw. This guy had the craziest laugh and laughed so hard all the time at Patch Adams. It was better than the movie for sure. Just listening to the guy laugh. But then Ebert's worst movie of 1998 was Armageddon.
I love Armageddon.
I don't love Armageddon, but it certainly wasn't as bad as like a lot of the movies we just named.
We've talked about this. Like
Yes.
my most controversial take is that Michael Bay is good.
And speaking of Siskel and Ebert, the only time one of them, or that I know of, that one of them changed their mind, got the other one to change his mind about a movie was when they reviewed Broken Arrow. Ebert was about to give it a thumbs up, and Siskel ran it down so much, he's like, you know what? I'm going to give it a thumbs down. You convinced me. I didn't like it.
I'm shocked. My mom didn't really hate Broken Arrow. Like, she didn't think it was good, but she was like, I don't think it's as bad as you do. And like, she thought it was just kind of like entertaining. But she also like will watch the worst movies of all time. Like, she'll sit and watch movies that are just like absolutely horrible, like action movies and stuff. So it's not that surprising. But
Oh,
yeah, she
I've
didn't really
received
hate it.
multiple complaints about our Broken Arrow episode from people that like Broken Arrow. Or one of them was not specifically about Broken Arrow. It was just like, I think you guys need to disagree more about the movies. And I was like, you're complaining about the Broken Arrow one, aren't you? And they're like, yeah, it was.
I
the
get
Broken
like
Arrow
I'm
one."
shocked that anyone would like Broken Arrow, to be
Me,
honest. Like,
me too. Yeah, I don't get it. But
I just have to say, like, you know, it's like you just have to remember, if you like something that other people hate, like that's fine. Like, we're not
Yes.
right. Like, my dad told me when I was
Patch
a kid,
Adams
and
is
this
gold.
advice that stuck with me always is like, just because somebody says something doesn't mean it's true. So we
right.
can say how much we hate Broken Arrow, or in my case, the one that I got a lot of heat for was Pump Up the Volume.
Yeah.
Which I hate and I stand by. Horrible. But
So
if you
I
love
think
it,
I underrated, or I overrated Pump Up the Volume by one. I have a couple of episodes where I wish I could have the rating back. And that was is I wish instead of giving it a 7, I'd given it a 6.
yeah. But this one, look, I would watch Pump Up the Volume like 100 times before watching this again.
Let's go to the Slater rater. On a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give Very Bad Things?
A 1.
Nice.
For sure. Easily a 1.
I'm going to go with a 3. It was bad, but I got a few chuckles out of it. What about Christian Slater's acting?
That's like a tough one
It
because
is a tough one.
like, I don't think he's per se like bad, but like, okay, you know, when like Robert De Niro's like being Robert De Niro, like to whatever degree Christian Slater is Christian Slater, like this is Christian Slater, like playing Christian Slater for me, like the way that like all late Robert De Niro films are or something.
I feel like he could be better in it.
Like it's Ooh, I'm gonna say like a 5.
I think that's very fair. I think I'm going to go with a 5 too. I think that like he's not straight up awful, but for a movie that he's the executive producer of this movie, so he obviously had some kind of passion about it. I feel like he feels like he's kind of walking through it.
Yeah, and once again, it's not like per se his fault, because like if he was just like the one evil character and he was like comically evil, like I would be like open to that.
Sure.
It's just not a great character.
No, the writing is soft.
But yeah, I'm gonna say a 5 is fair.
I'm also going to go with a 5. Then on a scale of 1 to 10, how hunky was he?
I'm gonna go with a 1 again
Wow.
for this one. A 1.
Gonna go with a 5. Of all the shitty 90s fashion on the dudes in this, his shirt when they were at the bachelor party, his like weird like collared sweatery shirt was the best one. Felt that was the best look anybody had.
It's like I can't help but like in the Nymphomaniac episode, like he's attractive because he's just such a nice, like normal dad and kind of lame, and he lets his wife treat him like shit. But like in this movie, like I just find him like completely, absolutely repulsive. So like whether he looks physically attractive, I can't even know,
No,
because
that's
like
only
he's
part
just
of it.
so
Yeah.
psychologically repulsive.
The hunkiness is a whole overall thing.
Yeah.
I'm taking off a lot of points for the bad hair again, and probably
Mm-hmm.
because I was annoyed by the movie. How much more of him would you like to see in the movie?
I can't remember how this one goes. This is like a weird one for scoring,
It's
right?
the negative points. For 10 is the most you want to see more of him, and 1 is the least you want to see more of him.
Okay,
Or 0. You could even go 0 if he's in it the right amount, actually. Yeah.
I'll say 0 then. I think I don't necessarily want to see less of him, but I definitely don't want to see more of him.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I'm just going to go with the 2. It's hard to say you want more of him in this movie.
Yeah.
But I could have probably done with, well, I don't know. That's a good question, because if his character had been more of the movie, would it have made more sense the movie? Maybe. I'm going to raise it to a -3.
Okay.
That's actually just lowering it. And then those are all the categories. This movie's definitely getting an F. Are you reading anything right now?
I'm going to start reading, what is over my reading group? Let me see what it is. I haven't started it yet. Leaf Storm by Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
Oh, I love Garcia Marquez. I don't
that's
love
what I'm-
everything by him, but I've read many of his books, and I love his writing.
That's what I'm going to read for my next reading group. That's
Let me know how
nice.
you like that one, because yeah, he has many like. If you ever read Love in the Time of Cholera or 100 Years of Solitude or any of that,
I've never read any of his stuff.
Love in the
That's
Time
why I
of Cholera
decided
is
to
one
go
of
to
my
this one.
favorites.
This is a short one because this group is for books that are under 200 pages.
I started reading
Short
Adam
novel.
Bede by George Eliot, who is a lady.
Who is what?
A lady.
Oh, a lady. Right.
Famously, like yeah,
Yeah.
true, yeah. It's
I
pretty
didn't
good
hear
so
what
far.
you said at first, and I was like, huh?
Next time we're going to have Hunter back on to talk about the movie Alone in the Dark, which is known to be one of the worst movies of all time.
Ooh.